Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. And we got yet another diary by Didier about an improvement to xorsearch. So the last improvement was the ability to use YARA rule, which of course also allows regular expressions. Now, in this diary, Didier talks about how to use what he calls ad-hoc YARA rules. Usual YARA rules are written in a file and they span multiple lines, but there are things that you often want to do in these YARA rules, like simple things like look for a regular expression, look for a string. So what these ad hoc YARA rules are, these are YARA rules in command line arguments that are essentially sort of abbreviations. So instead of spelling out the entire YARA rule, you just tell it, I would like to use a regular expression. Here's the regular expression. I would like to use a static string and the like. And that'll make it easier to use these YARA rules. In particular, if you're sort of just searching around, it's not necessarily some YARA rules that you would like to, for example, maintain as a standard configuration file. And then some security news from a couple days ago that I haven't had a chance to cover yet, and it involves DKIM, the email anti-spam standard. So DKIM adds a cryptographic signature header. However, that cryptographic signature only covers select headers, typically the from, the subject, maybe the to header. This is what's abused here in this particular attack. The email being sent here claims to be a subpoena from law enforcement, but the email itself claims to be sent on behalf of Google. So what attackers are doing here, they're taking a legitimate security email from Google, and then they are adding the signature from this email, including some of the headers that are verified by that particular signature to their email, so to their email body. And this kind of replay of digital signatures, of course, is a common problem in cryptography in general. Usually you add something like maybe a timestamp or a serial number or something like this. But in DKIM, this doesn't really work. Like the attacker could also just spoof the timestamp of the email, just sort of, backdate it essentially. In my opinion, probably the best, somewhat technical solution here is to vary the subject field. So not just make it security alert, but security alert for, and then maybe the name of the recipient or something like this, in order to make it a little bit more difficult to spoof and easier for the victim to figure out what exactly is going on here. Interesting attack, and definitely something to be aware of, that DKIM is really not meant to ultimately authenticate the email. It's really more meant as a spam fighting tool. And with that, its scope is somewhat limited, and it's not a replacement for SMIME, PGP, or some of the other signature methods that actually verify the entire email, including the body of the message. For all the details about this particular attack, see the great blog post by Easy dmarc. They recreated the attack, including how the email was sent, how the headers were copied, and all of those details. So pretty good work here. And sadly, certificate authorities continue to have a hard time figuring out who is in control of a particular domain and who should be allowed to request certificates for this domain. Zel.com uses a method that at first sounds relatively straightforward to implement and should be as secure as other methods. And that's where you just add a special record to a particular domain's zone that allows the certificate authority to look up an email address authoritative for that particular domain. The problem is that due to some interesting, I should say, logic error at SSL.com, the civil authority that had this problem, you were now not only considered responsible for the domain that you added the DNS record to, which is the original intent, but you were also able to request certificates for a domain that your email address was using. So if you authenticated an email address at a webmail provider, like let's say gmail.com, well, you were also able to request certificates for this particular webmail provider. This is certainly a big issue in particular since, of course, webmail providers themselves are sort of a target of these machine-in-the-middle attacks that would be enabled by these fake certificates. Apparently, SL.com has gone over its logs and found something like 11 instances where certificates were issued using the faulty logic. Not clear if they were all malicious or just innocently, in the sense that maybe someone used an email address at their own domain or another domain that they owned and then obtained a certificate for those domains. Well, and that's it for today. At least that's all I got time for. Should have covered a story that you thought may have been more interesting what I covered or more relevant? Well, let me know. And any feedback, as always, is welcome. Thanks, and talk to you again tomorrow.